I'm joined today by Lee Bridges. So welcome, Lee, to the show.
Tony, thank you so much for having me on, buddy. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad to have you on the show. Lee is an amazing drummer. I wish I could drum as half as good as what Lee does.
I wasn't expecting that.
That's a new one. That's a new one. So you're the first drummer I've had on you, sir. Lee is also a great podcaster and the author of an amazing book called Do Shit, Get Shit Done, which is all about mindset and motivation, which is one of my pet topics these days. So Lee, please share with us your story, which includes your struggles with drug addiction and how you now help people with their mindset and motivation to achieve amazing results.
Yeah, perfect. So look, first things first, Tony, I really appreciate you having me on your show. That's awesome of you. And yeah, I've had a bit of a sort of interesting life, I suppose. I often sit in sort of meetings with people, especially like financiers, and like a lot of the stuff now I do is with a brokerage. So I'm often sat down across the table from people and they say, tell us a bit about your background. And I tell them and they kind of screw their face up and go, okay, maybe, okay, let's see if we can do business kind of thing. But so in a bit of a nutshell, mate, it's I was a traveling musician for most of my 20s, and when you're a musician, unless you're completely like, you know, playing with Beyonce or Bob Dylan or something like that, you end up not having that much money. So you'll go on tour, you spend a few months in a tour bus, come back to England, and then realize you can't pay your rent. So you have a few options. You either end up playing sort of function gigs and wedding gigs and stuff like that, which I did a bit of. But the thing that I got into was teaching. So I ended up teaching, lecturing actually, music and music business and stuff like that. So I've worked. So for a long amount of time, I was sort of either on the road or in a university or a college. And then, yeah, as you rightly pointed out, had a fairly bad drug addiction, which you're more than welcome to talk about. And then off the back of that, wrote a book which helped me to get off of the drugs, which is kind of why. It's funny because I've been called an author a few times because I have a book, but I definitely don't think I'm an author. I find it quite hilarious because I don't know. I never thought that I'd write, if you know what I mean.
It's one of those things that most people want to do. They want to write a book. We've all got a book in us. And I've written a book as well, but I haven't published it yet. But it's in the offing, and
awesome.
Right, yeah. But I think it's a great starting point because, you know, as you've gone through some challenges with your life, I'm sure aspects of that are covered in your book as well. But it's led you to where you are now, and you know the book itself. I have looked at snippets of it. I meant to read it fully before we come on today, but there's some great stuff in there. And I think everybody that's listening today, those who've had challenges, I'm surprised if most of those haven't, then it's a great book to take some takeaways from. So.
Oh, bless you, Tony. No, I really appreciate that. And what's your book about, mate?
Sorry? Mine is more to do with my challenges. One is obviously a child, really, where usual stories start off with a tough sort of upbringing, broken sort of marriages from my parents' point of view. So moved umpteen times, often to the wrong part of the world where you have to fend for yourself, shall we say.
Gotcha.
And I remember the lesson. The one thing that's always stuck in my mind is that having to queue up for free school meals, because we didn't have any money at the end of the day, but made to wait last in the queue until everybody else had been fed.
Oh, ouch.
So that sort of experience, if you like, certainly helped forge my future, because at the time it was demeaning and you felt it, and it never left me, if I'm honest. So I've always, if you like, vowed to never have to struggle financially, and this is why I'm in the industry I'm in at the moment. So.
No, absolutely love that. Isn't it? It's a crazy thing, isn't it? Because sometimes those things that are really, really hurt and they're really, really raw, when you're a kid, you look back and you're like, oh my God, thank God that happened. Because it really does mold you. It sounds a bit soppy, but it really does.
It shapes your future. And you can either use it to your advantage and use it in a positive way, or you can let it get on top of you and crumble. But this is where having the right mindset comes into play.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The thing is, I was talking to someone about this, weirdly enough, on a podcast yesterday. And I think the funny thing is I'm terrible at so many things. But the one thing I've learned is that it's a lot of it's consistency. So I think if you kind of do something regularly, even if it's just a tiny little baby step, but you do it every day, every single day,
yeah.
lay another brick down, and it's not long and before you're sort of like, oh, there's a bunch of bricks there. They don't look like rubble anymore. They're sort of like a little square, and you keep building them up, and then you're like, oh, there's a couple of walls, and then you've got a place to put your roof on. And it's and you can learn anything. You really can. You can be absolutely terrible and just be consistent and give it 6 months or a year, and you'll know what you're doing. It's just a brilliant thing. I love it.
I think one of the learning lessons from that is to look how far you've come in life, not how much further you want to go or need to go, because you've achieved so much in the past, and the future is just another succession of those small steps.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so cool. I love that though. When's the book out, sir?
I'm looking to get it out by the fourth quarter, so the end of this year.
Nice.
I need to do some.
That's such a business response in the fourth quarter. See, I don't know if we found this as well, because the reason I say that I'm not really an author is because firstly, when the book first turned up at my house, because I obviously got some author copies, I was like, oh my God, that is like about 2 or 3 times thicker than I expected it to be. So I had no idea what I was doing. I just sort of started writing. And it kind of turned into a thing where I was like, right, I think I can do that better. So I'm writing the second book at the moment. But the funny thing is I'm doing a podcast, which is a version of the first book. So I'm reading the first book while I'm writing the second book. And, you talk about sort of moving forward and kind of getting experience. And it's like, I'm spending a lot of the time being like, oh, I don't agree with that anymore. And do you know what I mean? I've changed my mind on that, or that bit was on point, and like, I'll keep that kind of stuff in there. But yeah, very interesting journey.
I think when you look backwards, certainly with a project like a book, you're never going to be totally happy with it. You'll always want to make changes, or you think, well, yeah, if I did this again, if I wrote this book again, I would do it differently, or I change this, change that. That's only natural, but isn't life like that anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, I always stand by this. I think doing something terribly is 100% better than doing nothing at all. And like for me, because I read a lot myself, I listen to a lot of audiobooks as well, and I try and educate every day. I try and do something every day where I feel like I'm progressing, because I think progression is definitely happiness a lot of the time. And it's just, yeah, it's very interesting to me what you can kind of get, that the very small sort of micro goals. If you keep doing those micro goals, they turn into the macro goal, and then you've got a win there. And it's like just little bits. You only have to do little bits, and it kind of compounds, and it turns into something really powerful and really, really, really good.
So talk me through the sort of key chapters you've got in your book in terms of how you now, because you're obviously helping other people with mindset and motivation. So give us a flavor in terms of what you've got in the book, and maybe some of the key points that you feel that will help the listeners when they're in need of a pickup, should we say, because they've struggled with either mindset or motivation.
Yeah, no worries at all. So I really tried to make a point of the whole of basically creating a strong mind. And I think it's a very, very simple concept and premise, but the majority of the book is the kind of stuff that you're just not taught at school. So I spent, like I mentioned, I spent a lot of time lecturing at universities and colleges. And I actually, weirdly enough, I won a Teacher of the Year award, which was amazing. And then I got let go the week after because I wasn't teaching to syllabus. And the funny thing was, and I remember, I remember this to this day, is all of my students were getting firsts. I was one of the only. I'm not to big myself, just to make a point. All of my students would get firsts off the stuff that we were teaching, and it was a lot of like life lesson stuff and things that I thought were really important. But I got let go because I wasn't teaching to the syllabus. So it's kind of interesting thing. So I set up a non-for-profit group for 16 to 21-year-olds called 100 Club. And what we teach there is kind of all the stuff you don't learn at school. So that could be, and they're really open sessions. That could be anything from, from mindset, motivation, sort of character building stuff, right up to, you know, how to do a tax return, finances, to entrepreneurship, to business acumen, and then right across the board, you know, health, fitness, nutrition, like all the things that are kind of, I personally believe make a well-rounded human, like a good human that does the right things, you know. So the sort of the take homes from the book, a lot of it's to do with consistency, and it's just kind of the idea of having that little personal coach that's with you the whole time. It's just going, Tony, come on, yeah, keep going, buddy, keep going. And then, you know, whenever you feel like you're going to crack, because that's it. I suppose the best way that I could explain it is, I always think, like, if you're at A and you're trying to get to B, whatever B is, B might be that you want to exit a company for X amount of money. B might be that you want to ask someone on a date. B might be that you want to ask someone to marry you. B might be that you want to lose a bit of weight, whatever it is. And the thing with life is there's a very straight line between those two things, but life will just constantly try and pull you off of that line. So the idea of, a lot of the idea of the book is to just keep people on that line. So whatever their B is, they can go, right, okay, I'm starting to move this way, and something happens in life. It could be something terrible, like losing a family member or a friend. Yeah. It could be something, you know, not that bad, but still sort of a bit crushing, like, you know, I don't know, you broke your ankle before the big game or whatever it is. And the idea of the book is to just keep them on that line. And so that you can get to the point where you've hit that goal and you've hit that target and you go, cool, what's the next one? Where do I go from here? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. As you say in those things, there's a lot of synergy between us, although it may not be obvious. We all know life gets in the way. There's no question about that. And usually at the time that you really don't want it. You know, as you say, it could be the biggest day of your life, the following day, and something happens and you can't either attend or whatever it might be. But these things do happen. But I think having that focus is key. And what I liken to what I do is that with my clients, then we obviously we set out with a plan for somebody to achieve whatever their goals and objectives are. And they don't necessarily need to be money related, but usually, obviously, money is required to have that sort of lifestyle or those events that you want to happen. But exactly as you said, things do get in the way. We are thrown off course or off track from time to time. But part of my role is very much in a similar way to you, is keeping people on track. So yes, we might sway off track from time to time, but it's about bringing people back on track to make sure they still get where they want to be.
Exactly that. And I think the other thing I'd like to bring up about the book is I weirdly enough, I was writing this about a month ago. So I'm writing the new book. And I was thinking to myself, I was having one of those moments where I was sort of like, sometimes it flows out and you know what it's like. Sometimes you're just smashing the calls or whatever it is you're doing. You're doing really well at the gym, whatever it is. But I was having one of those times where I was like, just looking at the computer screen, like, and nothing was coming out. And I thought to myself, I was like, I wonder why I've started writing, because it's nothing, I hadn't done it before. It's not something that I've ever been into. I do a lot of like copy and content creation and stuff like that for my businesses, but it's not something I'd ever done personally. And the interesting thing was I realized, this was about a month ago, I realized why I started writing, and it's completely sincerely, it's because I want to be honest. And I realized that for a long time, my ego was getting in the way. I kind of sold myself on my own crap for so long that I'd started to believe it. And that's a dangerous place to be, because once you can't tell what's honest and what's not, that's a bad place. And we're surrounded, I won't go off on one, but we're surrounded by media. One of my companies does digital marketing, so I understand marketing. I know how you market something. And, you're up against people that are lying. You're up against people that are constantly screaming like a load of crap. And, and I realized, I was like, that doesn't make me happy. It doesn't make me happy at all. I don't think it makes me a good person. And I've been trying over the last few years since I've been aware of it to just be honest, to just really like try and be a good human being, to try and progress in the right way, to try and make the right decisions, to try and react in the right way. And like you say, there's so much, you know, life is life. It's unrelenting. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't, if you're having a bad day, it doesn't go, yeah, no worries, mate, we've got your back. Like we won't throw anything else at you.
No.
In fact, a lot of the time it just, you know,
Yeah, you're on your downers, so we're going to kick you some more.
exactly that. And it's that moment, isn't it, when you look up to the heavens and you go, surely that must be it, and it just goes you know. So it's so something I really tried to, you know, that I'm really trying to do, and this is just a personal thing myself, is just to try and strip my ego out, get to the bottom of it, and try and work out how I can be the best person. So one of the things I live by, and I really I do this every day, is I just try and be a little bit better than the day before.
Yeah.
It's a really simple concept, and it might be one tiny little thing. It might be the reciprocity of some way. It might be like just doing a nice thing for someone, remembering to ring my nan, you know, and to just to check in. It might be something huge, like really putting myself out selflessly to do something else. And sometimes I screw up, and you know, and then I have to think about it and then figure it out. But I just try and be a little bit better every day. I try and leave things better than I found them, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. A lot of people I've had on the podcast have been big into gratitude. So I don't know if that's something you practice as well. But I will pick up on another point. Obviously, being honest. I think for me, I would relate that as being authentic.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, is that, you know, people, you know, when you're in business in particular, or you are building relationships with other people in whatever walks of life that is, you need to be yourself. You can't pretend. You can pretend to be something else or somebody else in short bursts, but you can't do that all the time. So I think life is about being yourself, and naturally some people are going to love you for being yourself, and other people are just not going to either get you or like you, whatever it is. But that's life. I think sometimes that's a tough lesson, but you're better off having the people around you who love you or like you for who you are, rather than ones who couldn't care less or don't like you, whatever it is. So.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I love that. It's that you are who you hang around with. You are who you, what you eat, not who you eat. You definitely aren't who you eat. That would be extremely strange. What you eat, you are who you hang around with. You are the situations that you put yourself in. And I think it's an interesting one, because I do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of stuff with, like, kind of not anti-school in the way. I don't disagree with school whatsoever, but I do think that there's a lot that needs to be disrupted in that particular space of education, where, you know, I have a stepson. My stepson's 13 now, and he hates school. He just genuinely hates it. And when we went into that first lockdown, me and his mum homeschooled him for a while.
Yeah.
And I've genuinely never seen him so happy. Most of it wasn't me, most of it was his mum, because I was in the office a lot of the time. But she was managing to teach him in a way that he didn't realize he was being taught, and she was relating to him. Obviously, with my sort of teaching experience back in the day, you know, I know that you don't get bad students, you get bad teachers. And if, you know, it's funny because his name's Cal. So Cal's favorite lessons have got nothing to do with stuff that he enjoys. And whenever I ask him, I say, why do you like that lesson, mate? And he's like, oh, I don't know, I just really like it. And I go, do you like your teacher? And he's like, yeah, I love my teacher. And then he'll do something like PE, which he loves. He loves physical education. He loves sport, doesn't like his teacher. And he's like, no, I'm not really up for that. And I think there's so much to be said about being able to relate to people. Like you say, just being really honest with yourself, being truthful, being realistic and authentic, and just being able to go, look, this is me. Like, this is me. If you don't like it, that's fine. Move on. That's not a problem. If you do like it, let's have a chat. Do you know what I mean? It's very sort of simple concept.
I think you're right. If I look back on my school days, then exactly the same. I think, you know, most people would probably say that exactly that. If they enjoyed or they liked a teacher, invariably they enjoy that lesson. Doesn't have to be they were great at it, but it doesn't mean you still can't enjoy it. And it's the same with you know, as you are when we're adults. You will work better in an environment where you like people. Because one is, again, you know, we've all had poor bosses in the past and things like that. It makes such a difference. But if you are on the same wavelength as other people, then you can achieve a lot more because you're in a much better frame of mind, and in a culture that encourages you to be you, and help you to achieve and strive to be better, as you say, than you were the day before.
This is it. I always think about that moment when you know, the classic the teacher question when you're a kid, when you're sort of like primary school, and they're like, what do you want to be when you're older? And you're like spaceman, or like dragon, or dinosaur, or I don't know, Power Ranger or something like that. And everyone's like, yeah, cool, no worries. And then the older you get, the more realistic and mediocre and sort of, you know, normalcy comes into it. And you're built up to believe everything's possible, and then you have the carpet ragged out from underneath you. I've really tried to spend a lot of time surrounding myself with the people that if I tell them I want to be a dragon, they go, cool, how are we going to do this? Yeah. Like, how can we scheme a plan? And, you know, there's a lot to be said about just, yeah, surrounding yourself with the right people and being a good person. Like I really, it's something I preach, but I think it's a very simple concept, and really everyone wants to be happy, everyone wants to be loved, everyone wants to be successful, in whichever way, shape or form that is. You know, successful comes up a lot, and I think a lot of people have got it in their head that you know, it's all monetary, but I don't believe that at all. I think to be successful, it's relationships, it's health, it's, you know, it is monetary as well. It's your happiness, your freedom, your, you know, how you are with other people. And I think to get to that stage, you really have to open up and be honest and just be yourself, you know?
Like my background, as you know, is in the financial services industry. So money is my thing in my industry. And take it from me, happiness does not stem from money. It's
no, absolutely not.
You need money, like we all do, to pay the bills and have a reasonable lifestyle. But that is not the things that make you truly happy. It's all the other things in life, as you've mentioned. We'll touch on that later, but it's I've probably got a lifetime of experience of that, so I know what, if you like, what makes people happy and what doesn't make them happy. Money is that part of that equation.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that money definitely helps. You know, it can allow a lot of opportunities. But there's, like you say, there's so many more bits of the puzzle that you need them all at the same time. I know a lot of people that have got you know, a shed ton of cash. They're liquid as hell, but they're not happy, or they're, you know, they're really fit and healthy, but they've got no money, or they're overweight, but they've got bad relationships. You know, and it's trying to get all of those things at the same time, and kind of, you know, toe that line and ride the right wave, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I've read it somewhere where to have the optimum level of sort of happiness, you need around 75k a year to achieve that. Anything over and above that doesn't make you that much happier. You know, very small percentages. So it's, again, is as human beings, we have, obviously, you know, if you've you know, read Maslow's hierarchy, etc., is that we have basic needs, etc., and so obviously it goes up to different levels. But once you achieve what you need in life to be happy, then you don't need more money to do that.
No, this is it. And I think I read that statistic a while ago as well. And the funny thing is, it's insane, isn't it? Because everyone's extremely similar and also extremely different at the same time. And someone's needs can be completely different to someone else's. You know, some people, I know, you know, they need that 7 figures in their bank account. Yeah. Some people are completely happy, you know, living in their overdraft. It's just different strokes for different folks. And I also think everyone likes to have an opinion about everybody else, and they don't get their own, you know, they don't sort of clean their own side of the street before they start attacking everybody else's. And I personally, you know, it's a battle, it's a constant battle, but I'm very much trying to do that. I'm trying to sort myself out before I start pointing the finger. I'm trying to make sure that I'm in the right sort of headspace for myself before I start, you know, trying to analyze anybody else. And I think one of the things that comes up a lot, because especially when you do, like, I suppose the book's considered self-improvement, But the problem is when you come up in that, you always get put in a box, and you always get put in a particular kind of thing. And the whole sort of like the self-improvement guru kind of thing comes up, and I'm so the opposite of that. I very much believe that I've made a bunch of mistakes. If you can learn from my mistakes, perfect. If I can help you out at all, perfect. That's an amazing thing. If I can't, then move on. It's not a problem, and you'll be able to find someone else that will be able to. Some people will relate to it, some people won't. So it's just about finding the thing that works for you. Everyone's different, right?
We're all different. Everybody's unique. In the same way I do, everything I do for clients is bespoke to them. But I'm smiling because I had a conversation with another guest a few weeks ago, and learning by mistakes was a big topic in that conversation. And the best types of mistakes to learn from is somebody else's.
Well, it stops you getting your hands burnt as often, doesn't it? Weirdly enough, I was talking to someone about this the other day as well, and it's that kind of idea of I don't know. Sometimes it feels like you need to get burnt yourself. Like for me, with the whole with the drug thing, I had to hit rock bottom. It seems that was the way that worked for me to have my enough is enough day to get to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is this is terrible. This is not a way to live a life, and it's not a way to what's the word, to feel sort of like I should feel humbled about my life. I should feel thankful, and I should feel grateful. And I was throwing it away. And for me, I kind of had to put my hand in the fire, no matter how many people told me. And I really don't like that. I wish I could have learned without having to go through that. But at the same time, I think you're completely right. I think that if someone can save you the time and the effort and the energy and the tears and the blood and the sweat, perfect. That's a really handy sort of unfair advantage and a queue jump. I like that.
I think it all depends, obviously, the challenges that you're going through, because we've all done things that we regret or wish we hadn't done. You as obviously with the drugs is a different problem, and something that you in yourself have to go through, and you have to come out of that. Doesn't matter how well people around you wanted you to come off the drugs, that's still not enough for you. You have to do that for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is as well, because this is what I was talking about a minute ago with kind of cleaning up your inside of the street, is that like you are the only one that can control what you do. You can make your life better or worse. Yeah. You can choose whether to be a good or bad person. And I genuinely believe deep down, if you have to be, in the room, you have to be aware of it and have an awareness. But as soon as you know that you're doing something wrong, because you always know.
Yeah, of course.
As long as you give it the time and you're not on autopilot and you're not just going through the motions, if you stop and think, is this wrong or is this right? Am I doing the right thing or the wrong thing? You always know. Your conscience will tell you, your gut will tell you, your heart will tell you, whatever it is that works for you, you'll know. And it's a very weird position to be in, to be knowing that you're doing something entirely wrong and choosing not to stop it. Do you know what I mean? It's very
absolutely. I think sometimes we don't always recognize ourselves when we're in the midst of these things. I think sometimes it takes a lot to turn around, but usually there is a moment, I'm sure that would have been the case for you, where where you've hit rock bottom, whatever it is, but enough is enough and you've got to turn your life around, or there's only going to be one outcome.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I financially crippled myself, and that was the least of the problems. With that particular situation, it's funny because it gets brought up quite a lot, and it was a state I just honestly, Tony, I cannot think that I can't even compare how I am now to then. It doesn't make, the idea of doing what I was doing then now, it feels like it's worlds away. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the weird thing was, I've always disagreed with the drug trade. I don't, I think it's a terrible, horrible thing. And for some reason, I was that kind of anomaly that ended up just falling down the rabbit hole and, and just completely going out of control. And what was really weird about it, because someone asked me this the other day, they were like, were you lying to everyone? And were you, and I was like, honestly, no, I kept my ethics throughout the whole thing to everyone else. I completely screwed myself over. You know, I really put myself through it. I was lying to myself constantly. It was, you know, and that's the thing. It's that kind of look in the mirror moment that is very hard to do. It's very hard to sort of keep pulling back the layers until you get to the problem. And then when you get to the problem, it's hard work. It's consistent hard work that no one ever wants to bring up the conversation. When someone's going through something, a lot of the work I do is with mental health as well. So with some of the clubs I work and things like that, and I still do lectures and public speaking and things like that. And you know, and the majority of the time, it boils down to a lot of people's mental health, their anxiety, their confidence, and stuff like that. And the battle that someone will put themselves through is so much worse than the battle that they can have with anybody else. You know, it's always an internal thing. And it's just trying to get people aware that, you know, there's help out there. There's always help out there. It's just, you know, finding it is the bit that I think people struggle with. So it's yeah, just making sure that people understand that they've got a place to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's certainly with mental health and other challenges. Often it's a lifetime challenge, but I think hopefully, as society, we are getting better asking for help. No, we've seen issues, or we've seen it much more in the limelight in the last few years, in particular, with obviously high-profile people raising the awareness. So I'm glad to see that, you know, a lot of people are now looking or seeking help when they go through these challenges. I mean, I've seen I don't know if I saw it this morning. From Bruno was on again about his mental health troubles, etc. And obviously the gyms and things that they've got to help others in similar situations. So, Lee, you've mentioned a few times now you've been involved with a few different businesses. So do you want to give us a flavour in terms of what they are? Because a lot of what you do definitely seems to be all around the mindset and motivation area.
Yeah, for sure. It's, I suppose, kind of interesting. So at the moment, I'm going through insolvency with one of my companies, which is interesting to say the least. So basically, I bootstrapped. I was a touring musician for most of my 20s.
Yep.
I noticed a gap in the market. So a couple of things about musicians, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but the majority of musicians really terrible with finances. And also their work is seasonal a lot of the time. So for a lot of paid work that you would do as a musician, it will be over the Christmas period or throughout the summer. And then you've got these two bits either side of it where there's no work. You mix those two things together and it's, you know, it makes for a fairly hard life kind of thing, or potentially hard to pay the bills and, you know, and have structure. And so I noticed a gap where with my educational background, I kind of thought, you know what, I could set up an agency and I could make something where we're offering them regular work throughout the year. So we approached hotels and places that you wouldn't normally necessarily have live bands and DJs in, and approached them for sort of contracts as opposed to the ad hoc gigs that they were doing. And then kind of mirrored that with education on how to sort of run your finances, right up to stuff like mindset, motivation, things like that. And yeah, bootstrapped it. It got it into profit after about 18 months, and then ran it for about 7 years. And then COVID came and absolutely killed it overnight. I lost my, you know, this is all very recent and fairly raw. I lost all my lost my employees, lost my premises, everything like that. And I suppose you could definitely argue that this was a stupid move, but I suppose it will show my ethics. Is I didn't want to furlough anyone because I didn't want them to lose their 20%. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, brilliant! I get to not work for 80% of my wages," but it's like at the same time you just lost 20% of your wages. And some of the people that were working for us or with us, you know, they've got families. That's, you'll know this as a business owner. That is a hard cross to bear. As soon as you're, you know, if you screw up and it screws up someone else's life, that's a very, very heavy cross to bear. So I decided to pay them out of my own pocket, which would have been okay if there was only one lockdown. But, you know, then there was two, and then there was three, and it just, you know, we couldn't carry on trading. So really reluctantly, like I said, I'm going for insolvency with that company now. So I've got that on one side. In the meantime, at the start of lockdown, I decided, and this will, as a financial advisor, I think you potentially will either laugh or screw your face up at this, Tony.
Okay.
But I've never been in the financial sector before, and I I thought to myself, I was like, right, okay, what's going to happen moving forward? There's a few things that aren't going to go anywhere. And one of them is business funding and lending. So I set up a brokerage. So I kind of, I've done the same thing, bootstrap that, but we're now up to 4 employees, and we're getting some serious traction, doing really, really well. So I've kind of got a business in the finance. I'm always a complete open book. I don't see the point in lying. So I've got a finance business with no real financial background at all, which is hilarious in some respects. But for me personally, I work best, and I know this isn't for everyone, but I jump into things. And I learn. I know it's the it's kind of, jump off the cliff and build the aeroplane on the way down kind of thing, and that works for me. And I learn a lot quicker when I'm under pressure. So we're doing really, really well with that. And then the third one is obviously I've got the book and the personal brand, which I kind of do around office hours. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah. How about yourself?
Well, as you know, my main role is as a financial advisor. So, I advise lots of people on their financial situation. So I'm in the sort of pre-retirement, post-retirement sort of space. So people obviously approaching retirement, and they know they need to sort their finances out, whether it's be investments, pensions, borrowings, whatever it might be. So they are going to have obviously that lifestyle they want in retirement.
How has that changed with crypto? How has that changed for you? Has that changed your advice, if you don't know?
Financial advisors are not allowed to advise on crypto. It's a non-regulated investment, or I wouldn't class crypto as an investment. It is you are trading, you're speculating.
Yes. Yeah. So, and obviously with trading, there's a very thin line between trading and gambling. And I think not especially for long-term traders, but I think that nowadays where you can get an app on your phone and anyone can be a day trader, there's an interesting line there from where I'm sitting.
Well, again, it depends what stats you want to read, but the stats are certainly if you trade in of any of those types of markets, not necessarily just crypto, but currency markets, etc. Then the majority of, should we say, the ordinary person will probably lose, or 95% of people will lose most of that money, if not all of that money, within a very short space of time.
Yeah.
So if you go into that area, you've got to go into it knowing that you are at risk of losing everything that you put into it.
Yeah. And this is the thing, because I think it's especially with the crypto thing, and especially with trading apps and stuff like that. It's more and more where you'll hear your auntie or your mum or something be like, "Oh, I've just bought some Dogecoin, and what do you think of that?" And you're like, "What? Like, what is going on?" This is it's a very, very interesting world we're living in when a meme you can stick in $2,000 and be a 2 million up overnight, and then it's a very, very weird world that we're in.
You hear about like all things, you always hear about the positive stories. They're going well, but when they're not, people tend to go quiet.
Well, people don't like losing, do they?
Yeah, our psyche doesn't allow us to do that. We all like to be happy and successful. As soon as things start going in the wrong direction, it's something that we tend to keep to ourselves.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I find that fascinating as well, because I think I'm an advocate of being like, I screwed up, sorry, and I like to try and work out why I've done it, and I like other people's opinions. And one of the things that's getting us really far with the brokerage is, which is making a lot of the lenders laugh quite a lot, is that we're just so open. We're just like, yeah, I don't know what that means. Can you help me out? Yeah, of course, no worries. This is what that means, blah, blah, blah. But, I see it day to day where you can tell someone doesn't know what they're talking about. It's like, I was saying this to someone yesterday, it's like when someone pulls up in the car and goes, "Oh, do you know the way to so-and-so?" And even though you don't know, you're like, "Yeah, mate, yeah, no worries. Take a right up there." Blah. People like to be right. It's insane. Like, it's such a weird trait to have, because it doesn't help you and it doesn't get you anywhere,
Yeah, sometimes people will point you in the right direction deliberately, so... I've seen that. So out of devilment, or just to have a laugh. So So in terms of the finance brokerage that you've got, is there any areas that you specialize in?
Yeah, so I mean, we started off the thing that started getting us going. We're good at digital marketing, which is kind of why we started doing that, because we can drive good traffic and get good leads. And we ended up sort of initially we were in this sort of property arena, so doing a lot of stuff, and we still do a lot of stuff with property dev finance, bridging loans and things like that, JVs. And then we just sort of, as what we found is that, and you'll know this better than anyone, is that when a company wants to borrow money, they don't necessarily care what kind of product it is. It's just can they get the funds. So we've since got into like invoice finance, standard term loans, and then right down to things like merchant cash advances and bits and pieces like that. So we're opening up, and we don't like, not in a our whole thing, and I know this is one of those things people hear a lot, but I genuinely mean it from the bottom of my heart. It's we're just interested in doing a really good job, and we absolutely just, our customer service is that's what we want, is just to be bang on point. So we kind of have that thing where we'll, even if we get someone phone in and that it's not a lead, it's not going to go anywhere, you can't help them, we'll still service them in exactly the same way. They'll still get the same follow-up, they'll still get the same sort of most help that we can give them, kind of thing. And that's where we're at.
It's an interesting space that you're in, because if you can crack that space, you can do extremely well. And there's always a need for funding any forms of projects. And I think what I've seen in my own sort of world is that niching is where really you make the difference, rather than trying to be all things to all men. Is trying to then niche in a particular area, which is where your stuff inside out, which you'll get to that eventually, and therefore then you can be regarded as one of the top sort of firms in the country, or you are part of the world that does that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and this is the thing. I think it's I now more than ever as well, because it's interesting how the government have played this, because obviously now, especially with bounce back loans and CBILS and stuff like that, there's a large amount of individuals and SMEs that have taken out credit that never would have taken out credit before. And because they kind of, because it was sold in that way, I think a lot of people have sold the dream, and because it was sold in that way, and it's kind of like, you don't have to pay anything back for a year, and it's very, very minimal APR and stuff like that. And now they're getting to the point where they're like, oh, I have to pay this back. And, I weirdly enough, I do this funny thing, Tony. It's, I don't know if you'll find this ridiculous or not, but I'm not that interested in cars. But every now and again, I book myself in for a test drive under the proviso that I'm looking for a car, even though I'm not. So this is, I'll give you a bit of I
can see why you do it in the business you're in. So yeah, go on.
Well, this is it. So I've, over the last couple of years, I've gone for like Lamborghini test days and stuff like that. I had no intention of ever buying these cars, but it's quite fun to sort of go out and have them for a day and stuff like that. And weirdly enough, I was at a Mercedes garage. Probably it was in between the second and third lockdown, I think. And I was test driving this car, and I wanted to take my wife on a date. So I surprised her by turning up in an S-Class, because of COVID. You could borrow the car, they'd give it, take it for a test drive without someone in it. So I went and picked her up, took her out on a quick date. And I was talking to the salesman afterwards, and I said, "Oh, you've been busy, mate." And he said, "You would not believe how busy we've been." He said, "It's insane." And he said, "The funniest thing about it," he said, "you wouldn't believe how many people have come in here and bought a car for 49 grand because they've got a 50 grand bounce back loan."
It's the one thing I'm amazed at, but it's the one thing which is becoming apparent, that a lot of people have done that.
It's scary, and this is the thing. Again, you'll know this better than anyone. But as a financial advisor, I mean, like borrowing business money to spend on a car, no.
It's a complete no.
So we're finding this now with the brokerage, because we've obviously got, most of our phone calls now, or a lot of them. I've just realised I've got to start paying my bounce back loan. What do I do about that? I need more credit. And now a lot of people that weren't, would never have been in credit before, and now having to try and figure out a way to not only run their business and get their business back to normal after all the lockdowns, but actually to now finance the fact that they've taken out finance. So it's you know, it's an interesting sort of play from the government, but it's, you know, it's opened up even with the you know, the RLS scheme that they're doing. So even with that, it's like we were talking about it the other day, and we were like, okay, I see what's happening here, because now lenders can start lending out more. The appetite's been there the whole time, but they obviously the risk's been too high. But now they're starting to lend out money, and there's just so many businesses that are getting crippled by it, and it's extremely sad. You know, we talk to people on the daily where, you know, they've run a business for 5, 10, 15 years. And they've just lost it overnight, and on top of that, now they're in crippling debt. And it's, you know, it's not reported, it's not on the news, it's not, you know, and it's a serious problem.
Yeah, I think we will see it more and more. As you know, a lot of the loan backs, and now the last couple of months, and I'll gather pace in terms of the number of people that have to pay these back. So we are going to see more and more of this, where people have spent that money unwisely, sadly. But again, it's, you know, it's a lot to do with people not having a full understanding of how money works as much as anything else.
You know what? That's very interesting you bring that up, because one of the things I realized, because I had no idea for a long time, and you're not taught it at school. You're not taught about money, or what it is, or how it works, or, you know, what debt is, or how to balance your books, or whatever it is. There's no, and it doesn't have to be. The funny thing is, I realized this a while ago, it doesn't have to be that really boring, stupid conversation that no one wants. You can come at it in a relative way that makes complete sense. And I've taught my kids about money, but I've referenced everything to his Fortnite, you know, because he plays video games all the time. So instead of it being like, you know, that's a bank, it's like, right, that guy over there that you're trying to shoot, that's the bank. The ammo you've got in your gun is what you've got in your bank. Do you know what I mean? And trying to relate it, and he understands that and he gets it. But you know, you're pretty much set up to lose with a lot of the education system, in my opinion.
Well, we'll all should we say, brought through the education system to be employees for start, not employers or entrepreneurs. That's and so therefore you're set up to, should we say, always have to struggle or graft for very little, and not think of a much bigger picture for yourselves and what you can actually achieve. You know, we're all capable of achieving huge things in life, and that can benefit ourselves as well as many other people, rather than just turn up to a job which, you know, could be very exciting in the early days, but we all know, you know, after you've been doing something for quite some time, then should we say the enjoyment shine goes off it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just makes me laugh, not laugh in a funny way, just in an almost sort of worrying way. Is like, you know, it's always everyone I know that runs a business was not always, but 9 times out of 10 was the D or E grade student that was selling, you know, magazines, you know, under the bleachers or whatever, and all the A grade students are the ones working for them, you know. And it's my this is another funny one. My business teacher at school, in high school, never run a business. One of my PE teachers was overweight. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like, the whole thing doesn't make sense. So, you know, I think but what I do love, especially with things like this, like the podcast you're running is such an awesome thing, because it allows people can educate now with real people that are inside their space. They don't have to watch BBC to get their news. They don't have to watch CNN or Fox or any of those things. You can genuinely have an interest in something. You can go on YouTube, you can Google it, whatever, and then you can find something where someone that has real expertise and real knowledge, real experience can actually, you know, give their opinion, kind of thing. And then you can compare that to loads of other people doing the same thing. You can come up with your own opinions and ideals, and I just think that's a wonderful thing.
It's so important to come up with your own ideas and your own thought process at the very least. The problem with most people have got is that they don't know what good looks like.
No, couldn't agree more.
So, you know, they don't know what's true, what's fabricated, what's good, what's bad. So it's always going to be those issues. Tell me, Lee, it could be coming towards the end now. With regards to obviously the business you've got, which obviously, look, it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously this brokerage is a big part of your life now. So in terms of the mindset and the motivation, how does that fit in with that? Or is this going to be a totally different sort of angle for you?
No, not at all. To be fair, I really struggle when people talk about work-life balance, because I actually have a bit of a different opinion on this. And my life's my life. That's it. I want to enjoy all of it. I very much I definitely relax. I can probably explain this in a slightly easier way. So I've come up with these 8 things that I do every single day, and if I miss one of them, then I'm not complete. I don't feel completely happy. I don't feel completely whole. A couple of those things. One of them is progress. So I have to make progress every day, even if it's a tiny little baby step. I have to do something more than I did the day before. I have to try and be better than I was the day before. One of the things is looking after my nutrition. One of the things is, and of course I have off days, of course. But one of the things is exercise. I have to. If I don't do it every day, then I don't feel quite like I've done the right thing. I don't feel like the right. So I have the same thing with work. So to answer your question, I mean, I get into the office most days about 5:30, 6 in the morning. I leave at about 6 or 7 at night. And I tell people that sometimes, and they're like, oh my God, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And I have little, weirdly enough, one of the guys I work with is an absolute legend. And he put it really well. And he talks about having, he says he has a little bit of holiday every day. So instead of going on one massive holiday, he would have a little bit. So it might be you go for a cheeky beer at lunch, or you know, go for a walk on the seafront at lunch, or you stop to have a bit of a laugh and a joke. But you do it sort of regular enough that you get your little bit of holiday, and then jobs are good. And so I don't really have a work-life balance, and I don't really approach anything differently. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly trying to recalibrate and get to the point where I sort of, if I don't feel like I was making mistakes in a year's time about the year before, I don't feel like I'm growing. So I'm just trying to constantly do that, get a bit better, and do a bit more. So to long-windedly answer your question, I don't really approach it any differently. I put a lot of time into, it's called Reform Financial, is the brokerage. I put a lot of time into that and a lot of dedication into that. But I try and do that, when I go home, I turn my phone off and I spend dedicated time with my kid and my wife, and then I spend time on my laptop, and then I read, and then so I just try and do all the things that make me what I consider a good person every day. And then if I miss them and I screw up, I try and do them better the next day, if that makes sense.
Well, it's a perfect answer, actually. So I think when you're in business, you are a different animal than when you are employed. There's no doubt about that. And I think that you have to, you are very similar to me, that I've always been a lifelong learner. And that has actually been hugely enjoyable for me. So I like to know more than what the next person next to me does, because you can use that in a positive way to help others. And we all know the more people that you help, the more that obviously that comes back to you.
Oh, absolutely. It's the whole theory of reciprocity. And I think a lot of people really struggle to do something selfless. And it's very hard, I think, with a lot of the media that we have, and a lot of the way that things are set up, like reality TV and bits and pieces like that, where they really do bring out the worst in people. I think people have their guard up a lot, and it's very hard to just get up on a stage and get naked and go, look, do you know what, this is me, like, deal with it or don't deal with it. This is, and you really can. You can get a lot back without really asking for it, by just being selfless and just being a good person. I try. That's one of the 8 things I do each day. Is I try and do something selfless. Like, so for today, for instance, I got one of the students I used to teach from years ago got back in touch, and he said, "Oh, I'm just putting a book out. I know you've done that. Have you got any time, mate?" I haven't got any time at all. I'm so busy, and I carved it. I forced myself to carve him out 20 minutes, only 20 minutes. But he messaged me about 10, 15 minutes before we came on this call, and he said, "Thank you so much for earlier. Feel a lot of clarity. I really appreciate your time." And it's like, I don't want anything back from him. I just, he might go off and say to his mates, like, "Oh, mate, check out Lee's podcast," or go, blah, blah, blah. He might not, I don't know, but I know I've done my little bit of good for the day. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a perfect way to have that little slice of time to help somebody else. If not every day, certainly a few times a week if you can, because that will make all the difference as the conversation you had today to that person.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a bit like a scale, isn't it? It's I try and I talk about this in the book. It's a very sort of like a very very black and white, good and bad scale. And when I go to bed at night, have I done enough good that outweighs the bad? Hopefully, and if I haven't, can I do better tomorrow? hopefully, you know.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it. I've got that image in my mind now, so it's the scales work. So, question again, just before we come to the end, is something I always ask all of my guests, and the question which I will ask you as well is, what does wealth mean to you?
What does wealth mean to me? It's an interesting question. Honestly, I probably the same as success. I think people get sort of bogged down with the idea of like monetary. I think that there's a massive misconception, for instance, about the guy that drives past in a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. A long time ago, I would have been with the masses and been like, oh my God, what an idiot. Who the hell does that? Like blah, 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 blah. Now, even though I'm not interested in owning one of those cars, I look at those people and I go, fair play, because I know how hard it is to run a business, and I know how hard it is to get to the point where you can afford one of those things. I personally wouldn't drive around town revving my engine because that's not my bag. But I look at it differently. So I think, I think, what does wealth mean to me? I think genuinely, I think it means feeling whole, feeling happy, and being successful. And again, just to note, success not being just monetary, that being a part of it, but also good relationships, good friendships, good health, good nutrition, like just feeling like a good human. I think. What does it mean to you?
You've highlighted most of those things. It means balance to me in everything, all aspects of your life. And you've mentioned obviously the health, the relationships, the work that you do, helping others. I think if you can have that right balance, which is easier said than done, then your life is going to be as full as anybody's. But we have to recognize what that looks like to us. And as you said, money is a part of it, but it's only a part of it, not everything.
Absolutely agree. I really do. You're a legend, mate. Really appreciate you, Tony.
Again, just before we go, then, if people wanted to either work with you through obviously your finance brokerage, or if they wanted help with motivation and mindset, where are the best places to find you, Lee?
So you can catch me on leebridges.co.uk. You can also find me on Instagram at Lee Bridges. I also have my music account, which is at Drum Hacker. So if you wanted to catch me hitting the tubs, you're more than welcome.
I've watched you doing that, and you're superb drummers. So
bless you. And then also the company is called Reform Financial. So the website's www.reform-financial.co.uk. And then if you just Google my name, stuff will come up. But yeah. I really appreciate. Oh, yeah, there he is. See, this is why I need so I've got a girl that works with me, Maddie. She's always sat there poking me, going, "You didn't say that. You didn't say that." Yeah, the book is called "Do Shit, Get Shit Done." You can find it on Scamazon. Awesome job, mate. All the best. You can find it on Scamazon. We also I send out digital copies for free. So if anyone wants to grab a digital copy of the book for free, no problem. You can email me, lee@leebridges.co.uk or maddie@leebridges.co.uk, and she'll do it. And that's probably all the places that we're at. We also, last one we have there, because I know she's kicking me. We have the podcast, which is on iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, all of those, Anchor, which is under the same name of the book.
All right, brilliant. I put all the links in the show notes, so anybody who wants to pick up on these, they will be in the show notes for them to see. Lee, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. I've really enjoyed it, and your actual enthusiasm rubs off on me. So I really appreciate obviously you sharing the story. You have had challenges. You certainly are now in a different place to where you were now, and it looks as if the future is very bright for you. So thank you.
Thank you. Honestly, mate, I really, really appreciate your time. I think it takes a lot for someone to spend their special time, precious time on earth with someone else. So I really appreciate you, mate, and I love what you're doing. Thank you so much.
All right. You take care, and all the best.
All the best.